That was my good though. So, for those of you who've been watching my channel, you know that it's a fact that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is false. Not just false, but evil. Thus, everything they do is wrong. It's a lie. And so in that context, you should also recognize why it's appropriate for me to laugh, mock, and scorn the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and any Mormon who refuses to acknowledge that fact. Unfortunately, there are people who come to one video, as the woman did this morning. She went to the Church of Jesus Christ is not the LDS Church, and claims in her comment that she saw the title and was interested in what it had to say. No, she wasn't. She's lying because of the comment she made. She was disappointed that it wasn't faith promoting, obviously from the title. Was she thinking that the Church of Jesus Christ is not to be called the LDS Church? I've done those videos. They're worded differently. I did a whole name blitz before conference, and somehow she missed it. And so, because it was not faith promoting, she then was triggered to verbally abuse me. She couldn't deal with the substance, and so instead she then said, "I couldn't listen because of your creepy snickering." Sure, you could listen. You chose not to listen. You were offended because it wasn't faith promoting to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. You are a liar. And you are weaponized by the church to attack anybody who doesn't support the lies of the church. This is a common behavioral practice of children and adults who have not grown up and learning how to deal with information that they've not been indoctrinated with do. She was being childish, as well as disobeying President Nelson in the April conference. You're supposed to leave me alone. And yet I have those who will not leave me alone. I'm reminded of Kwaku this morning. Kwaku had watched a video of mine and had obtained it and had used a clip from a video of mine in his video before he was an apologist. And somebody narked on him, and I found out about it. And so I checked it out. And I was surprised. He was listing my quote with other critics who do videos on YouTube. And the other critics were quoted as, being crazy. But my quote was a legitimate one. I was surprised. I was expecting him to take me out of context to fit his agenda for the video. And he didn't. I still am concerned. What did he... How's that? I don't... Huh? And so I would go on to give him the key of translator. He'd threw it away. But I had found another video of his where he declares that the plagiarism in the Book of Mormon is proof of its truth. Oh my God. And so, yeah, and then he went and attacked It's Me, Jesse. And I had to step in. She's not Mormon. She's not a critic. She tells us in her video series on our channel, missionaries came knocking at her door. She's a Christian. So, as a good Christian, she invited them in to hear their message. And she then studied the church, as an investigator should. And of course, the internet has a whole bunch of stuff, both positive from the church, biased about it, and critics. And so she was learning about the church and doing videos about what she was learning. And so, yes, she's making some errors in research, but does that justify Kwaku and other apologists to attack her? She's not Mormon. She was never Mormon. She's investigating, and you're attacking her? And so, like the video I just did for Independence Day here, to prepare us for this chapter, everything the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints does is a lie. There is no truth in it. There is no authority. Thus, it's false. Are you not able to see that premises lead to that conclusion? And as false, by pushing that they're true, that makes them evil. And sure enough, the Book of Mormon says they are. Joseph Smith says they are. Those are prophecies, because those were before Brigham started his church. So unless Brigham Young purposely fulfilled the prophecies to deceive Mormons, to see how he could do it, well, it worked. He did it. For over 200 years now, he's deceived Mormons. And so the true Christ, as I pointed out in the video again this morning, you go to section 107, verse 91 and 92, the president of the church. Prophet, seer, revelator, translator. The man like Moses. The keys of the gathering, who came to Joseph Smith in the Kirtland Temple. Section 110. And you see in the footnote below, Doctrine and Covenants, section 107, verse 16. Okay, there's a man like Moses who will be raised up among the Mormons to lead Mormons in an exodus who are in bondage. But neither of those passages, footnote, Joseph Smith History, verse 40. And those scriptures for the scripture chain? Acts and Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy is the prophecy of the Jews. It is their law of a man like Moses. And Joseph Smith says in verse 40 of his second vision, which is exactly the same as Lehi's second vision in the Book of Mormon, 1 Nephi chapter 1, he's our Christ. Thus, Joseph Smith, as the president of the church, was our Christ. And the future Mormon, to save Mormons from bondage with an Exodus, being the man like Moses, is our latter-day Christ. This is not complicated. This is real simple. But if you came here thinking you'd hear faith-promoting stuff about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, you're on the wrong channel. Don't get upset with me because I'm telling you the truth. And you can't handle it. So now Lehi is talking to his son Joseph, specifically named by Joseph Smith Sr. He's the one who had to rewrite the 116 pages after Martin Harris stole them. Took them back to Palmyra to his anti-Mason buddies. So Joseph Jr. had to be put in timeout for a year to make sure that the Palmyra Council would not be hunting for Joseph. And apparently they didn't care. They didn't see what Martin Harris thought he saw. And so thus he was able to pay for the Book of Mormon when it was finished. And Joseph Smith miraculously makes an appearance in the final month and a half to finish the whole Book of Mormon. With Oliver Cowdery. Sure. Yeah, Sidney Rigdon's the major author of the Book of Mormon. So even though Junior was on a timeout, Sidney Rigdon kept on going. Nobody knew of Sidney Rigdon yet. And thus Oliver Cowdery was working with Sidney Rigdon. So in the final months, Sidney Rigdon's work was done. And thus, a marvelous work and wonder is about to come forth among the children of men. Ta-da! They had finished. They were just finishing things up, getting them transferred onto copper plates to give to the print press and get Martin Harris to pay for it, etc. And so Oliver Cowdery makes an appearance with Joseph for the Whitmer home to get them to think that it's continuing so that they have a cover story and so forth. That's the real church history. And so, the last born, Joseph in Genesis, is the Christ. He's not the last born, Benjamin was, but he's the last child of the birthright blessing children of each of the wives of Jacob. Because there's Rachel and Leah, and then they had concubines. And so there's a birthright blessing son for each wife as a result. And so Joseph was the last of the birthright blessing sons. But because Jacob had a thing for Rachel, Joseph was favored by Jacob. And thus was given the long-sleeved cloak so that he doesn't have to do work. Had nothing to do with magical colors that glowed in the dark and sparkled with Donny Osmond in it. Ugh. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you're lucky. Good for you. You don't want to find out. I have not seen it, though. I refuse to watch it. That was born in the wilderness of mine affliction, just like Jacob. And so again, to remind you, Jacob stole the birthright blessing from Esau. I had a Christian person. God. You get people from other religions coming to one video of mine and they think they're going to push the Bible on me with Christian interpretation? Dear God, it's almost as bad as Mormons. I am an anthropologist of the ancient Middle East. And as such, I am a translator. I have that gift. And I've had it this whole time. This is the whole thing I started YouTube with. So the Mormons would know. And he's coming. The time is near. And yet, nobody cared about my translation work on YouTube. Only on Amazon Publishing and Academia. YouTube only likes me if I'm criticizing the church. But in doing translation videos, I am. And so, Jacob, in usurping the birthright blessing from Esau, now is going to give birth to the human Messiah, seed baby Christ. That's how it is done. No immaculate conception. And so Joseph is the Christ of the Genesis story. And yet Exodus turns Joseph into the preparatory Christ for the man like Moses. And thus Genesis is Joseph Smith. Man like Moses is the latter-day Christ, Emmanuel. And I need to take a break. Be right back. Okay, I'm back. So, Joseph is to Joseph Smith as Moses is to the man like Moses. And yeah, me. And so John the Baptist preparing the way for Jesus. Yeah, Joseph Smith preparing the way for me. And Joseph Smith history, he knows my name. Which just, it blows me away. Because in the Joseph Smith history, he says that he was in Vermont, Ontario County, now called Wayne County. And no, that's New York, isn't it? Manchester. Let me check. Because I think it is actually Manchester, Ontario, because it was the Ontario Lodge that William Morgan and Joseph Smith Sr. were a part of. Yeah, Palmyra, Ontario, now Wayne. And so he does not make that difference when he gets to the part of Harmony, Pennsylvania. He doesn't say Harmony, now called, because it changed. And before they got there in 1818 or 1816, it was changed 2 different times before they got there. In fact, I think Harmony, Susquehanna. Lanesboro? Or is that the other one? They change it back to Harmony? Because the church is involved. 1809. It's parts of Willingsboro, now Great Bend Township, and New Milford Townships. The present-day Ararat, Oakland, Jackson, and Thompson Townships were later split from parts of Harmony Township. So that's what it is today. It's not Harmony anymore. The borough of Susquehanna Depot was created in 1853 as part of Harmony Township. Yeah, they're not getting into the origin here. Unincorporated village of Brant, 1883. Yeah, they're not. The church just covers up everything. Just unbelievable. So, yeah, I'd have to find the site. Yeah. Latter-day Saints believe, LDS movement, LDS Saints believe that Joseph Smith and Oliver Cowdery were visited by the angel John the Baptist near Harmony in 1829. That's after Martin Harris, though. But then they go back in time to that. And that's why they won't tell us the truth. Communities and locations in Harmony Township. Yeah, they're not going to tell us. I doubt. This is it. Now the question is, how do I find it? This is it. They have them in alphabetical order. Hartford. Harmony. Yeah, here we go. Oh, this is great. Place names, old and new. And it's out of order. It was formed in 1809. Harmony was the name given. In 1789, to the first settlement in the area where Cascade Creek emptied into the Susquehanna River. Took the name of the settlement. Okay. And then 1869, it was called Harmony Center until 1875. Cascade Creek empties into the Susquehanna River. In 1789, at the mouth of the creek, County Center. First name of the post office established in Brant, 1869. Well, it was changed to Brant in 1875. Lanesboro Post Office. Let's see, the post office was established in 1820 as Lanesville. See, here we go. In 1820 it was called Lanesville. Name was changed to Lanesboro in 1829. Yep. Lanesboro was first called Lanesville, named by Martin Lane. His son, Jesse Lane, changed it to Lanesboro. So yeah, that's weird. So yeah, I need to make sure that I have this link in my files, because I've been having a hard time finding it. Cool. So yeah, this is going to be a little bit longer for you, but I had to confirm this. That was the name. It was Lanesville, and then Lanesboro. And so, yeah, it was after they got there, so they did know, which means they knew about the change. But Joseph Smith, in his history in 1838, does not say now called Lanesboro since 1829. And so if you've heard me talk about, or if you know yourself about Abigail's father selling Joseph land in that area after Martin Harris stole the 116 pages, it's because of their need to create a cover story. Harmony, PA, history. I've got it somewhere else in my files, but copy image. And so, yeah, because Joseph didn't do that when he would have known of the change, he's telling us something. Because he's purposely leaving out things in history. He's purposely putting in things that have symbolic, prophetic meaning. There we go. Gotcha. Alrighty. Cool. Okay. So, because of that distinction, to say Wayne, but not say Lanesville or Lanesboro, leads one to go, Now we know the name of his Christ is Ammon, from Emmanuel, who is the Egyptian sun god at noonday. And so the last name would be Sun God, Good Cell, God Soul. From the British Druids, the Sun Gods, worshippers of the Sun God, the hidden name. They would not tell the name of their name until they were forced to in the end of the 1500s into the 1600s. And that's when it first emerged as God Soul. And they were the ones who inspired the guy to do the prophecy of St. Patrick, who battled the serpents, just as Moses in the Exodus. And so these sun god druids of England, who knew they were the prophecy of the bloodline. And that's why St. Patrick was involved with them. And then thus the other guy created the myth of St. Patrick, which is actually the prophecy, because St. Patrick's Day is the death day of St. Patrick. But it's the prophecy of the birthday of me. And I, for the death sign, birth sign, death sign, which is the latter days, but my actual birth. So Joseph Smith also knew this, because not only did Brigham Young select the date, and thus the law of the Jews, Deuteronomy chapter 19, for false accusers, and the punishment for false accusers, Brigham Young being a false accuser, designated the date for his replacement as he replaced Thomas B. Marsh of March 17th, 1839, while Joseph was locked up in Liberty Jail. Yeah, no milk scrapings. It was a false accusation. Brigham Young chased him out with his Danites and took over the 12. And so Joseph, in 1842, on the 15th of March, he became a Master Mason. My grandfather's birthday. Grandpa Godsoul. And 2 days later, boom, he gives women who give birth to babies. He's already given women the priesthood. Now, to the Relief Society, he says, you can organize your Relief Society priesthood office with offices of Melchizedek and Aaronic priesthood, and uses deacons, teachers, and etc. in the text. Joseph Smith Papers. He knew what he was doing when he rushed, after becoming a Master Mason, to do that for women. And Brigham took it away. So there's a little extra information for you. And so, Travis, he who is from the crossroads, the solar eclipses of the sun god for the latter days, the first year, the last year, and this year, 14th of October, over Utah. But the first and the last are crossroads of the sun and its shadow over America. The crossroads of the sun god. And Joseph Smith even knew Wayne, Wagoner. He knew my name, just as both Amen and Amen in the first and the second vision knows Joseph's name. He's trying to say he knows my name too. And he's letting you know it, letting me know it. And as a kid, this is wild. As a kid, I hear about this 2 Nephi chapter 3, about how Joseph Smith was prophesied in Scripture. They wouldn't tell us it was his dad. But I then thought, I wonder if I'm in here. And so I'm looking through the old the Bible and the Book of Mormon. After a couple of minutes, I'm quit. I can't figure it out. I don't know how to find my name. And so, yeah, that's just wild. And my patriarchal blessing. You know, my patriarch was a member of the family. He's like a cousin, uncle to my mom, something like that. And do I even have it? I doubt it, but it's on the other files. Yeah, it didn't pop up first. So yeah, it's not in here. Should be for use for this kind of situation. But because he is family, and believing that he was in the true church and was inspired by Jesus, he wanted to do a good job. He wanted to be honest and do it better than others that he had done, who he wasn't related to. And so in his blessing, I saw where he tried to be the same as his other typical blessings, but I could tell he was being told not to do it. He was conflicted. I could see it in the blessing. It's hilarious. And so, yeah, when it comes to my career, he wanted to do a whole paragraph thing on my career, 2 sentences, because he was told not to. And he goes back to missionary work. I have a mission on this earth to do. And the first mission, which was supposed to be the 19-year-old mission, he talks about, you do understand, Lehi's giving a patriarchal blessing to Joseph. So, do you see how it connects? And so I'm thinking, okay, this is my 19-year-old mission. And he says there's a possibility of a foreign language there in your future. Study and look forward to it. What language? And so in high school, I'd already taken French. That was what I was forced to take, because I didn't want to take Spanish, because that was sounding complicated. Yo quiero Taco Bell is as far as I can go. Because of the commercials. And I was denied taking German. And so I go out on my mission, and English. And I'm going, did this fail? Is it because of me, or was he not inspired? Clearly he was inspired. And so I'm puzzled by that. But I come back from my mission. I make a stupid choice of bailing on Leanne Murdoch and then settle for Stephanie. She takes me to Canada, and eventually I go to the University of Lethbridge. And in my final year, that's when the guidance counselor said, you've been here for a couple of years now and you still don't have a major. And so she created a dual master or dual bachelor's with a minor in what she called ancient languages. You know, it doesn't matter if she understood any of what I was taught. But it's an anthropologist of the ancient Middle East, is what the whole thing was. And so to help me get those, she had their geology teacher, who's from Harvard, who was taught by Thomas O. Lambden, whose biblical Hebrew grammar is worldwide, and it's over $100 to get his book at that time, even in Canada, which means it was more in America. Well, less in America, but more. Textbooks, they screw you over. But this was a lesson manual for Hebrew, biblical Hebrew. But yeah, he was literally among the foremost Hebraists in the world, because he was taught under Thomas O. Lambden, who is known worldwide as the guy. And so just like Joseph Smith, who got Josiah Sykes, I believe that was his first name, Rabbi Sykes, and taught Joseph Smith some Hebrew, I likewise, just like Joseph Smith, was taught biblical Hebrew. And guess what I was trying to figure out? How Elohim is supposed to be plural, not singular. Anybody familiar with the King Follett Discourse of Joseph Smith? Exact same pattern with Joseph. And no, I am not his reincarnation, as there are other Mormons who claim to be. But yeah, there were some Mormons who believed that Joseph was going to come back and reincarnate to rescue Mormons from the Great and Abominable Church. No. It's me. And so I then understood 6 months later when I deciphered Paleo-Hebrew script in February 1997. I don't know the precise date. I just know that it was in February because my philosophy of science teacher had told us that the greatest discoveries, most of the greatest discoveries in a person's life are done before they turn 26 years old, or 27 years old. And here I was, 1 month away from turning 27. So that's how I associate it. Because I have associative memory, visionary memory, not memorization. So you'll notice that I drift off up into the right when I'm trying to recall what you would have memorized and thus be looking over there for. So, fascinating stuff. And then the second mission in the Patriarchal Blessing, he says that I will be called to a high and holy calling, but he had no clue what it was. Really? You couldn't just put 70 or apostle or president? My mom tells me that when she was dating Mormon boys, they would all brag to her to try to get her to marry them that in their patriarchal blessing, they were told they were going to be the president of the church one day. None of them did. None of them were. But no, he couldn't do it. He knew it was a high and holy calling. And I knew it was a high and holy calling. It says high and holy calling. And so it's not some stake president or bishop. It's a high calling. But he couldn't figure it out. Now you know. Now I know. So yeah, with my career, I told him I was leaning towards becoming a private investigator. I'd gotten my security guard license and thus skipped basketball practice and thus was benched for the first 2 minutes of the game so that I didn't start as punishment, and had done some work as a security guard because of the license. And so I was thinking maybe something like that, but I wasn't sure. And so when he got to it, he got a stumbling block, mental block. And so he just says, well, whatever you do, you will be precise and everything will be provided for your career. Yeah. And I guess it's over here. The pile of books. Reference books, because I don't memorize. That's too much to memorize. I'm not memorizing all that. I want reference books. And I got them. Whatever I found, I got. And I was able to decipher Paleo-Hebrew in 6 months. And then went on to decipher the whole language, with the research study being very precise, scientifically. So these videos come from that background. And so they're in America. And so he tells Joseph, his last-born, that the land, Lord, consecrate also unto thee this land that is most precious, because this is where Zion is to be built, because of where X marks the spot of the crossroads of the sun god in the latter days. Everybody knows this, except Mormons. The church has kept it a secret from Mormons, when they themselves know about it. Nelson was planning a big conference next year for April to pull the wool out from Mormons' eyes. Surprise! We've overthrown America. We've now established Zion. Report to work. 11-year-old girls, come with me. But you don't believe. And so Joseph will be blessed. Thy seed shall not be utterly destroyed. Ta-da! There's a match. Joseph Smith History, verse 40. He uses cut off from Micah. Acts, of which he's saying he's quoting precisely as it stands in our New Testament, is destroyed. When you translate it correctly from the Greek, remember? I took Greek also. It's correctly translated as utterly destroyed. So, adding to Malachi, he says, at his coming, the earth will be utterly wasted if the hearts of the children are not to the fathers and the fathers to the children. And then, in 42, he is told by Malachi, the messenger, Nephi, Emmanuel, Ammon, so many names, that if he showed the plates to anybody, he would be destroyed. He's specifically avoiding coming right out and saying, Mormons, if you don't hearken to me right now, in these videos in the latter days, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints will utterly destroy you. They that come shall burn you. The day that shall burn as an oven. And so yes, it's frustrating to get comments by Mormons who are blinded by the church. The church has turned Joseph Smith and the Book of Mormon as a stumbling block for Mormons. And they cannot see what is plain and precious right before their very eyes because they don't study. They read, but they listen to the prophets to interpret it for them. And so they're not reading. They're reading for a feeling, trying to get that feeling again. That's idol worship, superstition of the idol worship belief. And it's going to destroy you. That's the trap they're setting for you. They are purposely dumbing you down to be sheep to the slaughter. That's why the church is wrapping things up this year. They want nothing more to do with this church. They want nothing more to do with Joseph Smith and the Book of Mormon. They are destroying it all. And they are destroying you with it all. Just like they did Joseph Smith. They framed him, set him up, and murdered him. They're doing that to you now. And I'm supposed to be the one to come out on a YouTube video and warn you. And you are supposed to hearken if you want to be saved. Come out of Babylon. And so he says, I am a descendant of Joseph. Likewise me. What is hilarious is on the 1st of January 1st, 2000, I came in to see my mom, and she was in her bedroom at the computer, and she was working on genealogy cards. I didn't know what they were. I asked her, what are those? Oh, these are genealogy cards from the genealogy file that we do temple names for. I said, oh, I'd like to help. Okay, so she gave me a couple of names that she didn't care about. She was very possessive about her family line, and so I would eventually go on to do my own genealogy on my own computer. They don't want me on theirs, and so. One day, she shows a card that had Jacob on it from the BC. The Jacob, the usurper of the birthright blessing, the father of Joseph. Because she had ran a temple-ready program for the whole file. And took it to the temple, and the temple printed out the cards, and it wasn't flagged. So Jacob, the usurper, didn't have his temple work done. So yeah, she had to send it back and notify them of the problems with the system. But yeah, our lineage, we fall for the trap of the European kings because we're through England and France and some others, and they were the ones who were faking their genealogies to claim their authority back to King David. And so by going back to King David, you just follow what the Bible says as literal history, and then you can go back to Adam. And so, yeah, I'm also through Jeremiah 53 generations back, according to my mom. And so it is obviously not accurate, but for prophetic, symbolic purposes, it works. And so I too am a descendant also of Joseph Smith Sr., who's writing this. I come from Hiram. And as I said in yesterday's video for chapter 2, Joseph Smith is the founding Christ of Mormonism, and Hiram was to be the capstone Christ, because Mormons rejected the cornerstone of Mormonism. They changed him to Christian. And so, through Hiram. And that's why his wife and son went with Heber C. Kimball. Because otherwise they would have stayed behind with Emma and Lucy and the other family members who were still alive. Because Samuel was murdered by Brigham Young by poisoning. He thought it would be funny to mock Joseph Smith's church by poisoning to death the potential successor competition to show that they aren't true prophets. Because in the Doctrine and Covenants there's a passage, they will take poison and not be harmed. Yeah, Brigham thought it was funny. And so, yeah, Joseph Smith had already set it up prior to. That's why in Carthage jail, he's talking to my third great-grandfather, John Solomon Fulmer. You have to watch to the end of the videos, where Lucy Mack's father is Solomon Mack. And thus, the great and abominable church that Joseph Sr. was married to. The bride of Lucifer, Lucy, the female form. And so, yeah, he had my third great-grandfather go get the Nauvoo Legion so that he would not be murdered. Now, why didn't Willard Richards and John Taylor get murdered? When Joseph knew that John Solomon Fulmer would get murdered? It's because they were in on it. They were the ones that actually did the murdering. And thus the guys who were accused were acquitted because they didn't murder him. They were shot by him. And so how could they have murdered him if they got shot by him? And Oakes doesn't want you to know that in his book about it. And so I am the fulfillment. The Fulmer family married into the Hiram Smith family to give birth, after marrying, into the Godsoul family. And my father's name, as we're going to get into it, is Wayne Lewis Goodsell. My grandfather is Louis Benoni Goodsell. Benoni is an Old Testament name. And then Wayne Lewis Goodsell, named after his father with the middle name. So following that pattern of naming us after the fathers, I was Travis Wayne Goodsell. And so when I had my son, I wanted to call him Stephen because I was having visions and prophecies of his life. If you're unfamiliar with Stephen in the New Testament, with Paul, the murderer. Instead, I was forced to name him Clayton, the town of Clay. So, yeah, I was able to be inspired of a blessing about his name, Clayton, but then also talk about him as Stephen. See, men always get the last word. And it came to pass. That's the thing, is that she was being unrighteous. And so the middle name, Travis. So it's Clayton Travis Goodsell. So she tried to have them adopted to take away the name, but she failed on that, and so they still have my name. he still has the name. I know Melissa got married and changed her name, obviously, but I don't know about Emma. It's been decades. Their mother had poisoned them against me, and thus fulfilling prophecy. 2 failed marriages. It's a pattern. 2 marriages. It's not about polygamy. It's about my 2 failed marriages. But the church wants to practice polygamy. Child bride polygamy. And so, what else do we get to do? We're only in verse 5. This is the big bombshell, and already we're 1 hour in. So Joseph truly saw our day. He obtained a promise. This is from the brass plates, remember? It's not in Genesis. This is added. And in the Joseph Smith translation, there's a whole passage by Joseph of Egypt, also in the Joseph Smith translation. You have to flip to it to read it. And then there's other stuff about Enoch too, but that's a different prophecy. But the papyri, there were 2 papyrus scrolls. The one we know of, he called the Book of Abraham. The other, he called the Book of Joseph, because of the setting up for the fulfillment of Ezekiel 37. It's not the Book of Mormon, as we're going to get into. Joseph Smith purposely was still trying to fulfill Ezekiel 37. And he knew he wasn't going to get to it, but he knew that he had to try, and it was the King Follett Discourse that succeeded. Because I found out, and I wanted to know, and I did the research, and I was precise, and I got my answer, and I figured it out, and now I am. I am that I am. Which is not the correct translation. As I've done that video giving you the correct translation. And so I obtained the promise of the Lord that the fruit of his loins, seed, egg, baby, fruit, the Lord God would raise up a righteous branch. That's the Egyptian story. Probably should cover it here. This might have to be part 1 and part 2. So, yeah, 1 hour for each, maybe. Okay.